I'm originally from North Philly. I still live in North Philly. I work for and at the Philadelphia Sanitation Department. Where do I begin? I started doing theater at the age of 3. I went to Freedom Theater. I graduated from Creative and Performing Arts High School here in Philadelphia, 2007. I went to college. I went on a tennis scholarship, and my major was computer science and dance minor. Then I joined a dance company and toured for a year. Then I had my first daughter, and life hit. And the starving artist lifestyle isn't applicable for a father. I started ducking and dodging into W-2s. Stagehand, I was the assistant stage manager for Center City Opera, tech, lighting, sound, everything. Then I got into the hospital, was a floor tech. Then I got into construction. And then I applied to the sanitation department 2 years ago, and it took them 2 years to call me. My number was 782. They called me in September, and my first day was December 30th of 2019. Been a trashman ever since. So I guess it would be father, sanitation worker, brother, son, nephew, friend. To some people, I'm a therapist. And just overall, I'm just, a chill dude. Okay, COVID has changed my life in a lot of many different ways. You think about what it was to be a sanitation worker. They come, they get trash, they go home. But in January, like after my third week, I was like, oh no, this is hard. My pacer says I'm doing 40,000 steps. When COVID hit, especially in Philadelphia, you have 30% more trash on the ground. Everybody's home. And then you have over 200 of my coworkers out, whether it's they tested positive or were quarantining. And then you add the summer rains, and we end up 4 or 5 days behind. And, all of these articles are coming out. It's the workers' fault. They're just calling out. It's time abuse, all this stuff. So that was my main inspiration for the Instagram. It was to give people an inside look at what it was to be a sanitation worker. I called it your Fav Trashman. I just kind of took it by the horns and became the liaison between the public and the department so that the public knew what we were dealing with. And then I did a call to action to see if the public would help us raise money to buy adequate PPE and cleaning supplies, and people just jumped right on. I was able to raise over $32,000 in 4 weeks. People realized that if we didn't do our job, the city would go crazy. Good Morning America, David Muir, Kelly Clarkson, people are just reaching out. Milwaukee Tools just dropped 1,500 gloves on us, and I've been passing them out. So, your Fave Trashman's really growing. And I think the next step for me is to try to work on some reform and getting some policies and legislation with some of these politics and really reform trash pickup in the city of Philly. And hazardous pay. That is like the number one biggest thing. Before the pandemic, my mother had an asthma attack that caused cardiac arrest back in February. She was like on life support and ECMO for 4 or 5 weeks. I have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, and they live with my ex-wife. I chose not to see my kids for 6 weeks because we just didn't have enough information. I don't know what trash or a house I get to on the route that's tested positive. So they're, blowing tissues, touching everything, and I'm picking it up. I just didn't feel safe to then go see my kids. But honestly, I'm a man of faith. So you just navigate. You trust God, and you keep going. And as of recently, my mother has the same episodes. She had another asthma attack that caused cardiac arrest, but this time there's brain damage. So, more than likely, she's, I don't want to speak that over her, but more than likely, she's not going to be able to breathe on her own besides the ventilator. So, me and my sister have a decision to make. Do we let her sit on a ventilator for the rest of her life? Or do we, just let her go peacefully? But your fave trash man helps. And she was a huge advocate for it. So this is what she would want. I was one of the ones that thought that trash men made a bunch of money. They worked half the day. They were home by 12. I now know that legit there are 4 or 5 industries in this city that have to happen for the city to work. And sanitation is one of them. My respect and just heartfelt feeling I have for my coworkers. Some of us are doing overtime, working 7 to 7, doing 14 days in a row just to make sure that the trash gets up. We were dealing with things before Corona even hit. Rodents, possums, rats, raccoons in the trash can. My coworker got poked with a needle yesterday and had to get rushed to the clinic and had to get 13 shots in his stomach because they didn't know what was in that needle. We're out here working every single day, not knowing if we're taking this stuff home to our kids, our families, passing it around to each other on the yard. So it feels good to be called essential, but now we need to be treated that way. What has really motivated me is that I'll be able to transform this industry and revolutionize sanitation. I have a son who's 8, and I don't want him to feel ashamed that if he says he wants to grow up and be a trash man, people are going to turn their face upside down. What really fuels me is the fact that I know that I can get to a certain point in this country where we can put some policies in place and get some legislation, pass a bill. Call it your Fav Trashman bill, where we can have sanitation workers receiving hazardous pay and better wages and better medical benefits. I think the most difficult choice I've made so far was the morning of the food drive. That was when my mother went into cardiac arrest at like 6 or 7 in the morning. We rushed her to the hospital, and I really wanted to stay. But they had the food drive. So I actually chose to leave her there. She was in a medical coma on a ventilator. There was nothing I could do. We ended up feeding 1,500 families that day. Yeah, so I didn't want to leave at all. But I felt like she would have wanted it to still happen. A lot of things been really positive. Making the national news, making the local news, getting huge companies to sponsor our events, or being on Kelly Clarkson and she sends 1,000 surgical masks, selling t-shirts and raising over $32,000 to buy masks and cleaning supplies. Talking to politicians and working on reforms. We have to get hazardous pay. That is like the top of the list. I will hope that we've learned to just treat each other like human beings. Acknowledge the fact that someone is doing a job for you. Just because I'm a sanitation worker doesn't mean I'm not a human being. I'm going to have days where I fall short, just like you do. And if we keep that in mind and we remember to treat each other like human beings, that'd be like 50 steps forward than the 12 we've taken. It's affected me a lot on 2 different levels. Feeling like as a Black man, I always have to be cautious. I always have to be on my P's and Q's. Feeling like even though I work for the city of Philadelphia, I'm not going to be treated any differently than the drug dealer on the corner. And on second thought, I have a black son. So we have to have these conversations about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And the type of dad I am, I actually did a little exercise where I put handcuffs on my son and held him, pinned him down. And he's like, well, why are you doing this? And I said, honestly, I'm doing this because of your skin color. Well, that's not fair. And I said, let's open up the conversation. So I'm trying to teach my son, who's 8, how he may have to navigate life until we get to a more stable place in this country. I have 2 daughters. My oldest one is a lot like me, very vocal, very strong, this is my thought and you're going to listen to me. And she may grow up and be in a position where just because she's speaking, no one's going to listen. And then you have to explain to her why that is. Because of her skin color and her gender. I call them every morning and we say affirmations. I let them know that they're beautiful and they're smart. And we read stories about Black kings and queens. I love being Black. I think it is the coolest thing in the world, being a Black man in this country. I think the only uncool thing is that I'm stereotyped because I'm a Black man. I feel like as a people, we can't even enjoy being Black because every time we do, there's a Karen calling the cops because the music's too loud or you walk too close to her. Our cultures are just so vastly different, and we've always done things to our own beat. They don't understand that when you don't understand something, you fear it versus trying to get to know it. As a Black man in the city, I think it's really important, the movement. I support the movement. I just think when it comes to my industry, I have to attack it a little bit politically in order to get further to push the needle. Not really. I don't enjoy the possums at work, but other than that, I just hope your favorite trash man can be a part of the movement. I say it all the time. Your favorite trash man is just trying to make a small change in a big world.